For more than 20 years, Oklahoma City residents have been agreeing to increase sales taxes to revitalize the city. After spending billions in public funds, billions more have now shown up for private development. And Oklahoma City has become a model for how to breathe new life into a community.
Mayor Mick Coronet points to a downtown elementary school, now under construction on land that for years was home to flop houses for the homeless, as a sign of how much Oklahoma City has changed because of 20 years of MAPS projects.
With MAPS for Kids, you're talking about an investment in 75 different neighborhoods, new or refurbished schools. And the MAPS for Kids grade school downtown, I think, is a fitting candle to put on the end of the cake after 20 years.
Cynthia Reed, Vice President of Marketing and Communication for the Oklahoma City Chamber of Commerce, says the new downtown elementary school shows downtown has for the first time become even a place to live.
I think the new downtown elementary school that's under construction is just further proof of the demand that we have downtown for families and people to live here.
The MAPS for Kids projects rebuilt or remodeled every public school in the city and spread revitalization citywide.
And a lot of good things are happening in those neighborhoods. You don't have to go very far in most cases to see new housing construction and sometimes new retail construction. New churches are being built. And I think MAPS for Kids was an extremely important catalyst to a lot of the infill that first ring of the city needed.
To fund the various MAPS programs, people voted for increased sales taxes for capital projects they knew in advance would not be seen for years to come.
With MAPS, the election was in December of '93, and I ended up cutting the ribbon on the library in the summer of 2004. So it's quite likely that the mayor that was in office when the referendum passed would not be in the office when the final nail was placed into the projects.
And that is not how most public projects get done in Oklahoma or in America, because the political benefit of the project does not flow to the elected official who launched it.
Because most people in Oklahoma City just think that's the way it is. That's the way it's supposed to be. That is not the way it is in other cities.
At the Chamber of Commerce, Reed says without MAPS, billions in private development would never have occurred.
From Midtown to Devon to the Thunder to, it's just that we stopped counting, actually. We conducted a MAPS economic impact study for a number of years, and at some point, the scope and the amount of things that were happening that are because of this revitalization are just too big to count.
The private investments tied to MAPS include Automobile Alley, $23 million, the Film District, $6 million, Midtown, $321 million, the Arts District, $137 million, Deep Deuce Housing and Historical Preservation, $179 million, Bricktown, $164.7 million, Lower Bricktown, $92.5 million, the Central Business District, $1.17 billion, the Oklahoma River, $25 million. The total public investment in MAPS is estimated at $2.83 billion, while the total private investment because of MAPS is estimated at more than $3 billion. Mayor Coronet says using tax dollars to invest in infrastructure worked for the city because of pay-as-you-go and because it built things you can see and touch. Cynthia Reed at the Chamber of Commerce says,
we've definitely shown the proof of what taxing ourselves can do for a community, and that if you work together and you plan it right and you hold each other accountable, you can do really great things. So that can exist even in today's political climate.
David Blatt is executive director of the Oklahoma Policy Institute. He says taxpayers agreeing to increase taxes for a common goal has worked before, even in state government.
When voters approved a tobacco tax increase for particular healthcare purposes, whether it was to expand health insurance coverage and a cancer center and tobacco prevention efforts.
And increased taxes also were approved to fund education improvements under House Bill 1017, something Blatt believes is needed again.
Maybe the time is ripe for a House Bill 1017 type initiative that would harken back to our state legacy, but also to some of the investments that have been made at the local level in places like Oklahoma City.
Mayor Mick Coronet also gives credit to the success of MAPS to something he calls Oklahoma City's secret weapon, a feeling of unity that comes from shared difficult times.
The economic turmoil of the 80s, followed by the emotional duress of the Oklahoma City bombing, I think gave us a unique series of life experiences that led to that unique unity.
A feeling, however, that is fragile and with changing times and demographics can be easily lost.
It's almost as if we're going to need to remind ourselves how we got here. Because if we can't remind ourselves of how we got here, and to a certain extent artificially, because this generation doesn't have the life experiences of the 80s and 90s anymore, then we're going to be just like those other cities.
Some 30 cities across the country are now engaged in revitalization efforts, modeled at least in part on the success of Oklahoma City and MAPS.